The first story takes place on September 4, 2006, near Australia's Great Barrier Reef. At the time, a 44-year-old man named Steve Irwin was filming an underwater wildlife documentary. You may not recognize the name right away, but chances are you saw him wrestling crocodiles as a kid. Known around the world as the crocodile hunter, this fearless Australian spent his entire life getting dangerously close to venomous snakes and some of the planet's most powerful animals. That day, Steve pulled on his trademark wetsuit and followed a cameraman into the sunlit, shallow coral reef. Before long, they spotted an enormous stingray measuring more than 6 feet across. Most people know these flat, venom-tailed sea creatures are generally calm and usually avoid conflict unless they feel trapped or threatened. Steve wanted to capture a perfect close-up for his daughter's television program, so he boldly swam directly above the giant ray. He hovered over the animal, only inches away, with his body blocking much of the light, and unintentionally cut off the ray's path toward deeper water. To the nervous animal below, the huge shadow above its back may have looked like a shark closing in for the kill. Then the situation changed without warning. The massive ray that had been resting quietly on the seafloor suddenly panicked. It whipped its long tail, armed with a sharp, barbed spine, back and forth like a cracking whip. In only a few seconds, the venomous barb at the end of its tail struck upward again and again in a rapid defensive burst. One of those strikes landed with devastating force, piercing Steve's chest and reaching his heart. Acting on instinct, Steve grabbed the barbed spine and pulled it free from his chest. But that desperate reaction made the internal bleeding even worse. Blood quickly spread through the otherwise crystal-clear blue water, creating a dark cloud around him. The crew at the surface immediately realized something was wrong and rushed to pull him into an inflatable boat while beginning emergency CPR. But his heart had suffered severe, penetrating trauma, and the combined damage was beyond recovery. The legendary wildlife expert who had faced countless dangerous animals died before the rescue helicopter could arrive. The next story happened on January 12, 2007, in California. In the city of Sacramento, a 28-year-old mother named Jennifer Strange entered a bizarre radio contest, hoping to win a brand new Nintendo game console for her children. The challenge was called Hold Your Wii for a Wii, and it was organized by a local radio station. The studio was stacked with bottled water, and the rules were simple but dangerously reckless. Contestants had to sit in front of the microphones and keep drinking water without being allowed to use the restroom. Jennifer joined the competition because she wanted to bring home the newly released Nintendo system for her kids. At first, the atmosphere was lighthearted. Contestants drank from ordinary small bottles and joked with one another. Jennifer even laughed while speaking into the microphone. But the radio host soon decided the contest needed more drama and raised the difficulty by replacing the small bottles with much larger containers. Over the course of a little more than 3 hours, Jennifer forced herself to keep drinking until she had consumed nearly 2 gallons of water. By then, her abdomen was severely swollen and painfully distended. She held her head in agony while stumbling around the studio with a pale face. The danger was simple. Drinking an extreme amount of water in a short period can dangerously dilute the sodium in the bloodstream, and that is exactly what began to happen. Eventually, Jennifer could no longer continue and returned home feeling painfully bloated. But the severe dilution of her blood triggered acute water intoxication. Excess water began moving into her cells, causing dangerous swelling in her brain. The pressure quickly affected her central nervous system and created a life-threatening emergency. Only a few hours later, the young mother lost consciousness in her bathroom. By the time she was found and paramedics arrived, she could not be revived. Later reports revealed that while the contest was still underway, a nurse had called the radio station to warn that drinking that much water could be fatal. But the hosts, who were focused almost entirely on entertainment, did not take the warning seriously and even joked on the air that women were made mostly of water. They also claimed the contestants had signed liability waivers, so the station would not be responsible. Jennifer's devastated husband filed a lawsuit on behalf of their 3 young children against the station and its parent company, accusing them of gross negligence leading to her death. In 2009, a Sacramento jury reached its verdict and ordered the station's parent company to pay Jennifer's family $16.5 million. The final story took place on April 10, 2009, in the United States, at a harbor in Southern California. At the time, a 54-year-old man named Jeff Twaddle worked as an experienced crewman for a charter boat company. He was known as the resident joker and loved performing silly tricks for other people. That day, he was helping take dozens of elementary students on an educational fishing trip. When he saw how excited the children were about everything in the ocean, Jeff's urge to entertain the group quickly took over. He reached into the bait bucket and pulled out a small fish that was still wriggling, then waved it in front of the children, making the whole group laugh. Wanting an even bigger reaction, he made a terrible decision and placed the live fish completely inside his mouth. His plan was only to hold it there as a joke, listen to the children gasp and cheer, and then spit it back out. out. But the stunt immediately went wrong. The fish, covered in its natural slippery coating, slid straight into Jeff's throat and by terrible luck, became lodged in his airway. His face changed color within seconds as he grabbed at his neck, with his eyes wide in panic. Teachers nearby and crew members rushed forward to help. They performed the Heimlich maneuver repeatedly, while an ambulance raced toward the harbor. But the fish was wedged too tightly. Jeff lost consciousness at the scene, and then went into cardiac arrest. When emergency responders finally arrived, they were unable to save him.